one of the things that I am remembering, and I don't know if you remember it this way or not, but I remember intentionally teaching you girls when y'all were little that men primarily need from women to feel respected, and women primarily need to feel from men that they're beautiful. And I've realized over time that yes, I do need to feel like my husband thinks that I'm beautiful, but even more than that, I have definitely needed to feel respected by him. And I've definitely felt like I had to work hard and prove something. So I love the way that I see God bringing a whole generation, not just Christians, and Christians are usually further behind in this, but he's bringing a generation to a point where we're realizing we all need this culture of honor thing. And I just think that mutual respect of what you are important and what you have to say is important, and it has nothing to do with the color of your skin, the age that you are, or the gender that you are. And we might take that, to an extreme in different situations or settings, but I think once we have that behind us, that we'll have this mutual place of respect where we have all cylinders running as a society. We'll be able to receive the things that can only come from a young person's perspective, the things that can only come from someone who's lived a long life, and the elderly, and we'll be able to hear from women and the strength and what they bring to the table, the same that we do as men. And I think we're going to see huge breakthrough in every area of culture as that happens. And I agree with you, and I'm sure that Justice agrees with this too, that we're in an unprecedented time. Like literally the last several months, there has been so much progress made in getting women caught up to that place of respect with some of the things that have gone on with, the Harvey Weinstein effect is what we're calling it, I guess.
Well, the hashtag Me Too movement is the overriding name,
And then the recent case where those poor girls over the course of years were molested by the
Olympic
gymnast coach, and they represent thousands and thousands of women alive in our generation, not even to think about the countless throughout past generations of women that literally had no voice and no ability to speak up and say, this isn't okay, I have more value than this. And it's, one person molesting someone, but it took a whole community and a whole culture to protect that sick way of interacting with girls, that I believe that is now, like, God has his light on it, and what he puts his light on is because he says we're ready to hold that ground as a society, as a generation. So I'm excited about that. It's good.
Well, and what's even worse about that particular scenario, I think it's 156 girls, and a good number of them famous Olympic gold medal winners. They had to insist and be very courageous and come out of comfort zone, and they had to do so for really years, some of them for years, even in this present environment. And there had to be over 150 of them just to be believed over one doctor. So that dynamic, I think all men know, like, there's something whacked out with that atmosphere, where it's one thing if there's one woman, one man, and one says one thing, one says another. It's like, okay, let's let due process go. But once you have that kind of evidence going for decades and for years in situations, that is just so unacceptable. But back to, I'll let you jump in a second here. I'm going to address again the church aspect of it, because I feel like I need to, while we're having this conversation, we're speaking to all sorts of peoples and people. And millennials will love to hear from you. Well, they'll all love to hear from different ones of us. But, just to remember how it was in Jesus' day, and how he is the ultimate demonstrator of, if we don't want to call it a feminist or whatever.
I think we should.
Didn't somebody write a book, Jesus
Christ Feminist?
Jesus Christ. I didn't see it or read it, but I remember
read that. That was see how it is.
See how it is. And so, but here's one who valued women in so many ways that were not normal then, and it will say, I mean, his favorite house to go pull away was Mary and apparently Martha's house, and so that's who was there. And then it will tell us that women are the ones that would always be, they're accompanying, they're actually paying and assisting things that Jesus is doing. They're the first ones at the burial site when he rose. They're there before the disciples.
The Samaritan woman at the well, even for him to speak to her because she was a woman and a Samaritan,
you got
just like unheard of.
A woman caught with the issue of blood. Like he's valuing, but even the reporters even the disciples that write in the other authors of the four Gospels, you can see entrenched, if we want to call it male chauvinism of some sort. Just the way, if there's a guy in general, there's Nicodemus. There's guy has a name, but there's a woman with an issue of blood, a Samaritan woman, and women accompany Jesus, and women were there. It's like, they don't have names. Well, I mean, they're obviously lesser.
5,000 men plus women and children.
Yeah, good one, Justice. Yeah, fed the 5,000 men. Plus women and children. Oh, really? You just plus women and children? Why is it not 5,000 women plus men and children? And so that tells you that even what was so left over and entrenched in Jesus' day was a culture that did not properly value women, and he modeled 100% the opposite of that in every way, in everything he did. And so, if nothing else, there is a need to even put much more priority on that if you're going to even argue biblically, doctrinally, and if you're not sure about the things we're saying about Paul, just like, what did Jesus model more than anything else?
So that is really good. Before we change topics, Justice, would you be willing to kind of share, if you could speak to Dad's generation of men, what would you say to them? How would you encourage them, especially just Christian men, because I assume most people that are going to watch this are believers. What would you want them to know, and how would you challenge them?
The first thing, just before we change from the other topic, is that there's a really, really good message just about what you were just saying from Chris Valentin. And I think it's called Empowering Women or something like that, but it should be really easy to find.
Like on YouTube?
Yes.
Empowering Women by Chris Valentin.
And he also has a book.
Last name, in case somebody hasn't heard of it.
I don't know how to spell it.
But Vallotton, Valentin.
And then he also has a book about it called Fashion to Reign. I think that's the one. And it's all about what you were talking about. And just, he doesn't call himself a feminist, I think, for some of those reasons that I was saying before. But I would definitely say that Chris is, and the ground that he's broken for women by being willing to go against what's popular. He's the one who ordained you however long ago that was. And that was not popular. It wasn't happening
12, 15 years
like
ago.
it is now, today. So that's a really good message from him about it. As far as what I would want to say to Dad's generation of men, there's a lot of things. I think one thing is I get really sad a lot of times when, and I know I'm not married, so I can't understand all the intricacies of marriage, but I get really sad when I see a lot of married couples y'all's age where the husband treats his wife like another child in the family. And I think it's so sad because they're missing out on man and woman together are the image of Christ when they're together. And like it says, submit yourselves one to another. And even when Paul talks about wives, submit to your husbands lay down your lives for your wife, he's saying the exact same thing, just in terms that that crowd would get better. It's the same effect of what he's saying. Yeah, the heart behind it is both of you submit one to another, both of you serve one another, lay down your lives for each other, because together, when you're that image together, the image of things before everything went wrong in the garden.
Very good,
And
Justice.
so in a marriage relationship, even you're modeling that for your children, of an image of God, his feminine, masculine heart together, because God is neither male nor female, even though we call him he. And so I think that a lot of men, they feel like they're being more godly or more spiritual by like, I'm the leader and I'm spiritually leading this family, and I'm
the priest of the household.
I'm the priest, the head of the household, whatever you want to call it. And so because of that, the woman becomes almost like a junior kid. So it's like husband, then wife, somewhere here, and then the kids. And
what about the scripture? People are probably thinking the husband is the head of the wife, or man is the head of woman. What does it say exactly?
She was covering that a little bit in the scriptures, the same set of scriptures that will say, wives, submit yourself to your husbands, will then follow, say, husbands, lay down your lives for your wife, even as Christ laid down his life.
But it says, as he is the head of the church.
I know, but how does Christ do that? He doesn't have these insistence of, he's an empowerer. And so it was about empowering. Then he just finally is like, in case you all are not getting it, submit one to another in the fear. It's like,
he further clarifies, don't get confused by this.
Well, it's like recognize the Christ that's in each other. Recognize like, oh, that's, if we want to call it anointed, that's good. Recognize the anointing on each other, or recognize an area of expertise. We find that out practically in our households. There's like, we'll have areas like, I'm like, that's yours, and you're like, that's yours, and some are like, no, that's ours together. And it's like, so there.
It works so much better that way.
It works, yeah.
And I think that a lot of, I've heard women say to me before, but it feels so natural to submit to your husband. And I think that they're getting confused with natural and comfortable, because if you really trust somebody, which hopefully you trust whoever you're marrying, it's really easy to kind of have a cop out and be like, you're the leader, you make the decisions, you take the fall for everything, and I'm just going to kind of like enjoy the womanly things. I'm going to cook, and that
might be too much honest truth, Justice.
Well, I think it is sometimes a cop out for actually doing what you're called to do and modeling that. So just because something feels right, I mean, I think we can definitely say that across the board. Because something feels right doesn't mean that it is right. And so we have to get out of that comfort zone and find how it's like your weaknesses and strengths complement each other's weaknesses and strengths. And God designs it that way because man, once again, woman and man were one being, and then they were separated. And so when you come together in marriage, it's that perfect model of God. And, well, not perfect, but, as close as we're going to get. And so I would want to tell men of Dad's generation that, and also just what I was saying before about those jokes, because that's the main people I hear those jokes from. And then also that just because that's not a gospel issue, like this is what I hear a lot, like, well, we just need to spread the gospel. And my whole thing is we need to spread the gospel, but if the gospel isn't still transforming hearts and people and like society and all of that, then we're just spreading a story that has no life breathing into it anymore, nothing. And so if we're like, well, women can live happy lives and they can get a job and they can do all these things, but we're missing the whole like subtle sexism that still plays out in culture, and we're refusing to address that oppression. That's just sad, and I see your generation of men being the primary generation of men who's struggling with that.
And there's both, but there's, speaking of gospel, it is gospel. The word gospel means good news, and so when you understand his ways, the good news is that he wants and desires women to be empowered, and that.
Because it's ultimately about the knowledge of God filling the earth, and the knowledge of God, as Justice was saying, is male and female. There's a feminine part of God, there's a masculine part of God, and all the gray in between. And it's a beautiful expression of who He is in the earth when we're all fully who we are.
And if you just look at again, when people try to limit women based on misunderstanding Paul's words, it's like, please lean on Jesus' example and everything he said. He had all these declarations, and he never separated who was empowered based on male or female. These signs will follow those who believe. Behold, I send you out as sheep among wolves. And it was never, well, there's female ones that you can do this, the male one. There's like,
He was speaking
have
to
authority,
everyone.
cast out demons, speak, do all the stuff, exercise kingdom authority power, and he never had a nuanced differentiation. Well, if you're a woman, obviously don't, keep your place. And
If you're a
keep
woman, make sure you're feeding your man so he can do this. Like there has to be together.
Yeah,
Maybe the wife is better at cooking.
Dad and I, it took us a while to come to that place, because what we had modeled for us was definitely more traditional,
Mm-hmm.
and our own parents, I'll say my parents definitely have progressed past
Definitely.
where they were when they were raising me and what they modeled for us marriage-wise, but where we've kind of come more and more into our sweet spot is realizing that we're both better off, and our children are better off, and our impact into society is better off when we function as a team.
Yeah.
And us as a team may not look like what another couple
Yeah.
is supposed to function like as a team, but for us what it means is we both look for each other's strengths so that we can defer to each other's strengths, but we also both look for each other's strengths so that we can get behind them and celebrate them and push them to the forefront. And so there are seasons where I'm more focused on helping him accomplish something and doing more of the cooking or the practical mundane stuff,
Yeah.
so that he can be freed up. And he has definitely
He does
done
that
that for
too,
me
yeah.
as well.
He's a dishwasher extraordinaire.
Yeah, I do most of the domestic stuff now myself.
She does a lot of cooking. He does a lot of cleaning.
But in that as well, and we speak again to the spiritual dynamic and another, because I almost can sense the entrenched religiosity, and so many men are being set free of my generation, our generation, and things like that. But there is. Yeah, but women, when you give them too much, there's this whole there's this thing of Jezebel.
Women think that way too. Women are some of the biggest proponents of, not giving priority to other women's voices,
I have something to
including
say
their
about
own.
that after
But
Dad.
Yeah, that women really are ones that will enforce the old standard even more because they think they're doing the right thing. But there is a reality that if men do not allow women, if you do not allow women to have the voice they're supposed to have, if you do not let them have it,
Make room for that is what you mean, not like you may do this.
Yeah, we don't
no,
like
but
the
you literally
let.
can. But you can literally shut the doors and not give them access.
Right, if you're the
like
leader.
I'm talking like specifically the church. The man has to let a woman can't just like, hey, I would like to say something.
The way things presently are, generally speaking.
Yeah, that's the part of
the goal long term would be to have the expression you're saying, where women are made room for, not that they're given permission. But
right, you can see how it sounds to her why is there a let?
Yeah, she immediately gets offended, which I
Not
understand.
offended,
It's
but
not
just
offended. It's realizing that
adjust that language.
that means that it's not the way it's supposed to be thought through. But I'm addressing the reality that presently there is.
That's true.
In the Christian circles, if men don't let, then it doesn't happen.
They don't insist, actually, because it's beyond just. At this point, it's beyond having to make room. Men are actually going to have to say, I am, if you don't want to call yourself a feminist, I am wanting to represent the heart of God correctly. And so we will have women leading in this
there's
whatever it
practical
is.
ways. You ordain women.
Yeah.
You put them in positions and you
Give them opportunity,
not just
to
a women's
learn.
ministry.
And give them permission to not have to earn a spot by sounding and acting like a man and doing it the way a man would do it. Giving them the freedom to explore what their voice needs to sound like, look like.
But what I was going to say, you create there's a spiritual ecosystem that's created when you have this that suppresses women from being and having the voice they're supposed to. You actually create an ecosystem that is conducive to Jezebel realities taking place, because when the voice of a woman in a healthy way is not allowed, then there will be, if we want to call it, illegitimate
usurping.
There would be, you go around, it's like There's no door, so we're going to make a way for ourselves. And often Jezebel is just about somebody. They can have had an injured spirit, wounded. There can be a bitterness because their voice has been suppressed. And like the only way you can do it is if you manipulate going through here. Of course, they give themselves over to spirit, and then it gets to be bad. But we have to, rather than just like how, yes, these women who yield to Jezebel and make themselves servants of Jezebel, the ecosystem created by healthy women in positions of leadership and authority, that's the bigger picture here. And you'll find that churches, I felt like we were senior pastors for 14 years. Elizabeth had a strong leadership, co-senior pastors, and she was very
the second half of that.
Yeah.
After I was ordained, and we lost half of the church because I was ordained.
You're right. You're right. And then we had empowered women all over the place.
And I just want to say one thing really fast.
But let me just finish this.
Okay.
The empowered women, because I'll forget it. The empowered women all over the place, we really didn't have Jezebel realities. Nobody ever said that was...
No, there was no Jezebels.
There was no Jezebel anymore, because when women's voice and discernment is allowed, they're picking up things everywhere, and they have a voice, like, that's wrong. And she can look over and say, honey, you cannot... That person there, and just there's something about, and so that's something we want to get that out as well. That create an ecosystem that's healthy
prevents that.
From preventing that is by empowering women properly.
And that's not to say that every woman who makes a way for herself in ministry is functioning under a Jezebel spirit, because I could hear some people being like, "Ooh, she made a way for herself." That's not like this truth is held in tension. That is the case a lot of times, but a lot of times you really do have to just keep standing your ground. Like I'm remembering even Havilah Cunnington, her story of how over and over again when she would speak, men were like not into it, not about it, and would tear her down. And she felt like the Lord was like, keep pressing on, keep pressing on. And so in that way, she didn't really make the way for herself, the Lord did, but she definitely had to keep standing her ground. And there, you have to do that through the Holy Spirit, not through your own will. And you're like, I will be in ministry. It's like, if God is behind this, it'll happen.